welcome to the Plenty of Positivity podcast. I am your host, Courtney Beck, and today we have Des Hague. Des is a 9-time CEO working with top-tier global brands such as those of Safeway, 7-Eleven, Centerplate, and Maytag. Through his private equity ventures, he has totaled over $500 million returned to investors. In addition, Des is heavily involved in community, and his efforts have totaled over $100 million towards worthy causes. It is my absolute pleasure and honor to welcome Des Hague.
Thank you, Courtney. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Des, and so happy to have you on the Plenty of Positivity podcast. I have been waiting for this moment to have you on.
Well, thank you. I hope I live up to the experience now. No pressure.
Just keep that high positivity, Des. You'll be great.
Okay, I'm going. Let's go.
Perfect. So, Des, why don't we get right to it and tell us the story of Des Hague, if you could begin with that.
Courtney, before I start, I wanted to just say one thing, and that is how positive an impact you have on people. I've seen you work firsthand with your students at Florida State. It's phenomenal. They love working you. You inspire them. If anybody who's not following Courtney on LinkedIn, get in there. There's Courtney's Corner, which is where she highlights and features a book. But she also runs this podcast, The Power of Positivity. And that's why, you are an inspiration. You're an inspiration to everybody, female, male, whatever in the world. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Des. That really means a lot to me. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. So a little bit about me. I was, as you can tell, I was born across the pond. I was born in Northern Ireland. My dad was Catholic. My mother was Irish. There was a bit of a racial conflict in the 60s. My home was set on fire. We fled. We went to the north of England to live. And I've always been involved in business from a young kid all the way through. I left home at 15 with no qualifications. I had an ambition, a desire that I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to be the CEO of my own company. And that was the path that I pursued diligently, ferociously. And I've had the pleasure, as you've said, of running some great companies, working with some amazing people. You didn't mention IHOP, which is a brand that I was president of and I love. Great franchisees, just like 7-Eleven. I've really been involved in startups all the way through to multi-billion-dollar companies all over the globe. But it's just been in fact, I just can't believe the greatness that I've been able to work on with people, and the opportunity to do that is something that, fills me with joy on a daily basis, Courtney.
Des, that is absolutely incredible. I mean, literally just going through the introduction and the amount of companies. But I do want to mention something too, is that you are one of the most humble people considering all of the accomplishments and the accolades that you have received. And so my question to you is, you recently launched the Thinking Academy to help others. So could you please just begin with what the Thinking Academy is and why you started it?
Well, it all comes back to, great question again, but it all comes back to, my life has been a lesson of you are what you make yourself. You have to think it first, and then you can be that. And it's having that positive mindset. So all my life I've been fueled with a deep desire to learn. And I think if you're learning every day is special, every day is meaningful. The Japanese, talk about continuous improvement when I was at 7-Eleven. And it's a philosophy that I've always lived there. And so I think it's the power of just driving and bettering yourself is at the fundamental level of the Thinking Academy. I wanted the Thinking Academy to be for people who truly want to commit to having a better future. And to do that, you got to think it, you got to live it, you got to learn it, you got to then put it into play. And so the genesis behind the Thinking Academy was, what about if we can provide lessons with an unbelievable cast of what I call Fort Sherpas who can help people improve their life and their quality of life and reach their potential? It doesn't get any better of that. Every company I've ever worked in, it's always about how do we maximize the talent? How do we grow the talent? How do we get the next level of leadership to help us grow? It can't just be us doing it and then we retire and then the company folds. It's got to be continuous improvement and a commitment to driving talent. And that's the genesis behind the Thinking Academy.
And the one thing that I heard you speaking about is your team, or should I say the thought Sherpas
Right.
behind it as well.
Yeah.
Now, these individuals, I have been following you on LinkedIn, and their accomplishments and experience combined is unbelievable. I truly believe that this particular Thinking Academy, I have never seen anything like it with that amount of expertise. So could you maybe explain who is all behind this as well alongside yourself?
Well, I wanted the Thinking Academy to be classified as the GOAT, the greatest all time. If you've got a goal, you might as well have a big one. That's my goal. I wanted it to be the greatest all time of personal development programs. I didn't want it to be, read a book and just be theoretical. I want it to be real hands-on and practical. And so the first essence or the first requirement of any of the Fort Sherpas who are really global leaders, who've been there and done it. My view is if you're going to learn from somebody who can help you on the journey, who's experienced your journey. So it's an eclectic group of global leaders, authors, keynote speakers, startup gurus, all the way through to global gurus from technology, from food service, from sports, from Olympic athletes, from fashion, the world of publishing. I wanted this group to have so many disparate, competencies
Mhm.
that everybody is going to learn a massive amount from each of these Fort Sherpas and, again, amplify and help people get along and stay along in their credit. So I don't want to, we got 16 Fort Sherpas, Courtney. If I mention one, I'll get criticized for not mentioning all. But let me give you a flavor of just some. Tom Pork. I've known Tom for almost a decade. He was the former president of Walt Disney Retail globally. He's on several boards. He's a kind of been there and done it executive, as I said. He was part of the Disney development program. He's so interested in the development of people. He was the first to call me and said, Des, I want to get involved. Frankie Russo, recognized world speaker, multiple, best-selling author. But the guy has had the experiences of starting and founding eight, if I can count here, eight Fortune 500 Inc. companies. James White, former colleague of mine at Safeway, but also the former CEO of Jamba Juice, currently the chairman of the Honest Company, and is on the board of Cava, the in vogue Mediterranean cuisine company, and so on and so on, Connie. So each one of these people are exceptional. They want to give back. They've got a wealth of experience. And again, been there, done it executives or startup gurus or athletes, having an Olympic athlete on the team, former Olympic athlete, I should say, but also a personal friend of mine, Keith King, for 20 plus years. We've probably done 11 ventures together. The guy's a superhero. He's a rock star. In fact, all these guys are rock stars, Courtney. And that's how I wanted to associate myself with. So when people come into the program, there's one course now, Think Your Way to the Top, like a boss, to give you that boss CEO leader mentality. And that's the first program. It's a year-long program, but there'll be many more. This is not once and done. This is not 1 year and done. We hope to have a global business development, personal growth movement over years that will influence millions, tens of millions, we're hoping. We will see.
That is truly a movement because like I said, I have never heard of an academy, if you will, with that level of expertise behind it. And you are completely correct when you talk about learning from somebody who's actually experienced it, the good, the bad, rising up from the bottom to the top. I mean, just everything. The experience is truly the value. And but the fact that you're creating this particular thinking academy with all of these experts behind it to help others, this is something that I could just tell you are extremely passionate about helping others. You could be doing so many other things, but yet here you are developing this thinking academy. So a big congratulations on launching that March 1st. Is there any particular also level of expertise that you're recruiting?
Well, we want to grow the next level of leadership. So it would be great. The book's there for anybody, really. There's 52 exercises that I think is going to help somebody in college today who's thinking about the future. But ultimately, the core constituent for the program is, somebody who's had a little bit more time on the wheels, middle manager wanting to get to VP, VP wanting to get to SVP, SVP wanting to get to the C-suite, and so on. So it's at that level, but it's also, Courtney, for all the founders out there. We have ideas. I had an idea when I was 16 to have my own fish and chip empire. Unfortunately, I'm a terrible driver and I crashed my caravan into a lamppost and I destroyed my business. So I never got to launch it. That was on the first day with my brother, Dominic. It was a terrible experience, but life learning lessons. So the founders out there who've got ideas, who really haven't been in the corporate world, don't really understand what a budget is, how to finance for growth, how do you, get to scale. There's so many different elements. So it's for middle managers, founders, people who want to have a refresher, people who want to, more senior who say, you know what, I could do with a rethink. Everybody's got to have this method of continuous learning. So it's really for anybody who wants to learn. But we're really trying to get that next level of leader or next level of founder to really succeed.
That is incredible. And I also want to add, as far as accomplishments, you have also been on 20 boards as well. So, Des, if you could just provide the audience, like I said, they're going to sign up and they want to hear, how you could help them for sure. But what are maybe some positive lessons that you have learned throughout your time being on 20 boards?
Well, soon we'll announce on Thursday it's going to be 21 boards. So there's one coming that I'm really super excited about. But mum's the word. Don't tell anybody on this podcast, Courtney.
Love it.
I think the key lessons really are you've got to be a student of business. You've got to be a student of history. And you go into the board meeting knowing your place and space. My position when I'm on the board is not to run the management team. It's to advise, it's to counsel, it's to question, it's to seek understanding. And hopefully it's also to give some experience of being there and done it. So I think for every board, there's different learnings. There's different ways that you can connect with talent. What is the CEO agenda? How is he or she thinking about the business? And then figuring out how can you help? And it should always be about how can you help? How can I lift up? We've talked about in today's society, there's so many things that people can, attack you on. And there's so many critics, who think they can do a better job. But until you're in the seat of a CEO or a founder, you don't know how lonely it can be. And everybody's got an idea for you. So you've got to have your own convictions. So it's understanding what's important to each board, the CEO of that company, the management team of that company. And then it's about how do you help? Is it relationships? Is it connections? Is it, different ideas? What you've done, like when I launched Turbo Chef globally, I learned a lot about launching a technology. So how do you help a technology company? Like I'm on the board of Margin. How do you help Margin? Also helping small businesses manage their funds. What are those correlations? How can I connect to help the team learn from my past mistakes as well? So it really is it's a accelerant for the teams.
I mean, just to say that you have been on or going to be on 21 boards, but
Yep.
all of those lessons, like I was taking from, you were mentioning, simply helping
Yep.
others through your experience. I truly believe that there's something powerful behind the storytelling that goes into those experiences. And you're absolutely right. Being in the trenches and actually doing the work, there is something to be said. It's easy to point fingers, right? When you
Yep.
see other people in there and you should have did it this way or we could have done it that way. But at the end of the day, really taking action. I'm all about dreaming big, but then also taking that action. It's one thing to have the ideas, but then also to, put them into effect and to actually see them live. It's a
Yep.
whole different story.
No, and I think, the quote I love is from my favorite tennis player, Roger Federer, of all time. And it's like his simple quote is this: you've got to embrace the hard work. Do the work. There's no short. That's the life hack. Do the work. And then good things happen from that.
Absolutely. And I have to agree with you. Hard work, I feel like there's no other element that is like when you look at the big picture, you have to have hard work in anything that you pursue in any industry, but the
Yep.
willingness to put in the long hours. I feel like a lot of the times, especially today, it's so easy to just witness the end result. But to know that that person's journey throughout how many hours went into
Right.
play, truly incredible. So I'm glad you mentioned hard work, just having that discipline. And
Yep.
ultimately, what are your thoughts on even consistency, showing up every day? Just showing up is something.
I think 90% of success is showing up and being prepared to roll your sleeves up, dig in, do the work. As I said, there's no, what I think about, that comes back to me like to do whatever it takes, and hard work is part of doing whatever it takes. And the thing that I like to keep in my mind is, if you don't sacrifice for what's important for you, what becomes the sacrifice is what you want. That becomes the sacrifice. So you've got to really say, okay, if I want to be, a C-suite guy, or I want to be a CEO or a founder, back that up. And if you don't make sacrifices for that, then that will become the sacrifice. You won't achieve what you've set out to do because you're not committed, and you're not following up, and you're not pushing yourself. And I think, we live in a microwave society today, don't we? We want everything in 60 seconds. And, social media's not helped. And, you want your 15 minutes of fame because you want to go viral. That's not going to work for 99.9% of the world. That's going to work for the ones who got lucky, the ones who were in the right place at the right time. Also, super talented. Lots of super talented people who never make success because they don't commit. They don't follow through. They don't even have a plan. And that's what you got to get. Then you can be successful. Then it's sustainable success.
That is so true. And I think what you were saying is having a plan,
Right.
but starting with that vision. You have to start with that vision. And something I like to do is the short term goals and the long term goals, because you're right. It keeps you on track because you are not going to see success every single day.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
but to celebrate even just the small wins along the way keeps up the confidence, the self-esteem to keep moving forward. But there's so many like lessons just drawing from obviously when you were a board member, still continuing to be obviously 21 here now, which is incredible. But one thing alongside all of the success in business, you are also a two-time author, Des.
I know. And
Yes.
soon to be 3 times, I hope.
Yes. And we will certainly get to that third
Yeah.
one. I want to highlight, I have it here. So think your way to the top, a 9-time CEO's 52-week journal. There it is. And then
Thank you.
also, you had a book before, and that was 15 Minutes of Shame. So I want to dive into both. Which one would you like to start with first, Des?
Well, let's go for the one with the 50. Let's go for 50 minutes of shame.
Perfect.
So, the book is really my life story.
Mhm.
And it takes you on an arc from, birth to today, or to last year, or the year before when it was published. And it's unvarnished. I wanted the book to be real, authentic. I also wanted it to be a learning exercise. As I said, my whole commitment to learning and continuous improvement, I wanted people to learn from both my mistakes, which were profound, and
Mhm.
also my successes and what got me through both of them. And the key message of 15 Minutes of Shame, while it does focus on a specific issue, what I was, involved with, got to me cancelled or attempted cancellation about a decade ago. Um, it was really built on everybody goes through adversity, Courtney. It doesn't matter what zip code you were born in. Everybody's adversity is at different levels. I like to. There's a book that I read every year, Viktor Frankl, in Man's Search for Meaning, and I read it every Thanksgiving because it makes me thankful for even my worst moments. My mother dying when I was 9 years old. Me. Being homeless a couple of times, actually having a sexual assault on me when I was a teenager, being beat up and mugged in one of my first businesses. I mean, severely mugged. And then, my wife having breast cancer, me at the same time getting uh, the beginning of prostate cancer. We all have our challenges. And we either can decide that we're a victim of those circumstances, or we can take control and be a product of our choices. Now, it's very hard when you're 9 years old to be a product of your choices. Your brain's not formed, but it's about, just having a belief that you're going to be okay. It's gonna be okay. It's like, what's the Jelly Roll song? I'm not okay, but I'll get there, kind of thing. I don't sing as well as Mr. Roll, but that was the genesis behind the book. I wanted to. I also I had so much fun writing it, Courtney. It brought me back to remember, even in the most awful situations, some great moments. I mean, we all can find the good and bad. As I was saying about Viktor Frankl, the book to me in Man's Search for Meaning was, if you can, if you've got a why, you can cope with almost any how. And so, I have a why in life. It was, at the time, it was I wanted to be a businessman. Even at 9 years old, I wanted to have my own company. And that was my why at the time. Now it's my family, which is the most important thing to me, and my friends. It's not about the title that I have. My title is, I make money for people. I think I'm a great family member, a good husband, father, a friend to people when they need me, and available. So the whole 15 Minutes of Shame, while it focuses on one specific moment that I'm disappointed in myself, because it allows you to be honest, authentic, true. I made a mistake. But I don't believe we should be defined by our worst mistakes. Who wants to live in a world where you're defined by your problems? If we put a microscope or a lens on anybody for 24, 48 hours, you could find a lot of bad with everybody. Is that the way we want to live? No. I want to lift people up. I want to be an inspiration. I want people to learn from my mistakes as well. So that was the genesis, Courtney, behind 15 Minutes of Shame.
Wow. Well, first off, when you were speaking, I want to take it back. You went through significant tragedies, challenges. I would love to understand, how did you muster up that self-esteem, that confidence to still keep going after such severe tragedies in your life?
Well, I'm Irish, so stubborn. We're we just keep going. Do you know, Connie, it was about an inner world. It was like I knew that I was going to get through it somehow. If it's from a higher being, from God or whatever, I thought that I'm going to be okay. I always knew I was going to be successful. It was, I just knew I was going to run companies from a very early age. Nothing was going to get in my way. Nothing was going to stop me, even when I stopped myself at times. And it's just taking, so many cliches that you can come up with, but they are very important. And if there's a will, there's a way. If you think it, you can do it. I thought there would be a better outcome. To be honest, when I was 9 and started a 6-year period of physical abuse from my stepmother almost on a daily basis, once my elder brother left home to safe pastures, good for him. I told you, I'm not as smart as some of people. I'm certainly not as smart as my elder brother. He got out of the situation. But the reality is, I had 3 younger brothers I wanted to protect. They were my why. I wanted to protect them from violence on a nightly basis. And that's what toughened me up. It's what got me to have unbelievable commitment to overcoming challenges. If you're 9 years old and you stood in front of somebody who's drunk out of their mind every day and battering you, there was hospital visits, stitches all over my body, but I would not let her get near my brothers. And that was to me my why. It was so important. And that's, it wasn't it's nice to do. It was a life or death situation. And I jumped in, and I think it was something that's made me a better person. And as you process it, you understand evil, you understand the challenge, the choices other people have made through bad decisions and life experiences, but you can never give in to evil. So it was a force for good.
No, absolutely. And talk about compassion to remain there with your brothers to ensure their safety, that they did not go through the same as to what you did. I mean, that takes courage, that takes bravery. And ultimately, like I said, just knowing who you are today, how that has shaped you and molded you. And talk about like just even the persistence to make it through that. But look at what you have been able to accomplish through.
Well,
I mean,
thank you.
well, it's an inspiration. It's not even when you look at what you went through to overcome that, there are so many people just listening to that that would not be able to move forward. And so it takes a strong mental toughness to understand that situation. Like I said, having that compassion to stay behind, protect your brothers, but then ultimately where you are today is remarkable to be able to come out of that.
And that's why my family, particularly through my wife, that we've really got behind so many causes. So when I was running Hot Stuff Foods, a small company in South Dakota, we got behind the children's house, where we would vet people. It's like St. Jude, you need life-saving treatments, but also spousal abuse. I've seen so many people, myself, being a recipient of you know home violence, and I've had that fear, and I want to help people. So in the community here in Summit County, where I'm living right now, there's they are people who are at risk, and we help them. If it's a sport, it's also about sport day. It's also about doing things to give them a little bit of light and hope to get out of a awful situation. But I know what it's like to be trapped, Courtney. For years, I was trapped. I was too young to leave. I didn't have the money to leave. When I did leave, I left and lived in a park, underneath a bush for a week. So I know the despair, but I'm just hoping, this message wasn't all about, saving souls, but, the reality, if one person's out there who listens and is feeling trapped in a relationship or in a difficult situation or whatever, is you are not alone, and you will find a way, and there's help. And anybody who is listening who needs that help, reach out to me on LinkedIn and we'll have a conversation.
And what you were talking about too is the mission and the why as to what you do in life. You
Right.
know, I think about even when it comes to like teaching what I'm doing now, what did I desire to have at that particular point that I did not have, and
Right.
trying to build that present day. And it seems like your story is very similar, is helping others. You've been through it. And obviously just relating it back to the Thinking Academy, you've been there, you've done it,
Right.
and being able to give back. One thing I did want to circle back around because I think it's so critical today, especially social media, of course, has great pros, but it
Right.
also has cons. And when you were discussing 15 minutes of shame, the one thing that really stands out, and you had recently just posted this, you wrote, correct in private, praise in public. And so that is something that I would love for you to expand upon what you meant in those few words.
Yeah, I think when you're in a leadership position, you shouldn't be trying to crucify, do Spartacus movements on anybody who's on your team. And I would tell you this, Courtney, it's great that I've got my bumper sticker, correct in private, praise in public. It's something that I have to live every day. I make mistakes still. I know I could have handled that situation last week better. Oh, I wish I'd have phrased this differently. People's perception, it becomes reality. I know that people say, guys, did I really praise in public? And was I really just giving you correction in private? Sometimes I fail. It's not like a, once and done and you can read it and that's life. But it really, what I like to do is after every board meeting, as I'm closing down every week, is did I achieve that? And that comes back to when you talked about a plan. If you've not got a plan and you're not hands on with your plan, it's going to be a disaster. And so, to me, it is important about, how do you correct in private? I see presentations that go right. I think that a board deck could have been delivered better. I think that we could have uh, taken a different course of action. And as long as you learn from it and evolve and move on, I'm happy. When you don't do that and you don't correct in private as good as you could, but if you don't learn from it, shame on us. My view is nobody's perfect. We're all infallible. And it's a great mission. It's not a bumper sticker to me. And if you can do that, then you wouldn't have all the hatred that goes off on social media. It's like, I love the song from Phil Collins, Too Many Voices. That is social media in a nutshell. Why do we want to hate anybody? Why can't we look for how we can bring people together? The best ideas win. It's not like in America. It's not the blue or the red party. It's the red, white, and blue. Do things that help everybody. I don't care if the idea is the current president or a former president on a different political party. If it helps, why can't we embrace the best idea and not get so we're all performative? It's all about what our party's doctrine is. No, we should be here to help lift up everybody up.
Des, that is magnificent. I'm going to pick this apart because there were so many things that I talked
Sorry.
about. No, it was incredible. So, a couple things. Speaking about like something that I love doing is journaling in the morning, but not just short term and long term goals. And I spoke about this actually recently on a podcast, but this idea of self reflection.
Right.
When we talk about, like you were talking about, like not just saying the phrase, sometimes I have to reflect like yourself, but we all have to do that. Nobody's perfect out there. And
Right.
I think when you take the time to be honest with yourself, because I'll admit it's very difficult when you're looking yourself in the mirror and you're like, okay, how could I correct this mistake? How could I do better next time?
Right.
When you are able to do that, you get better like that much quicker, if you
Right.
will. But it helps everybody. And when you were talking about that particular phrase, I was actually thinking about, and you touched on it a little bit, but when you say correct in private, praise in public, I think about how many times just the cancel culture that we see on
Right.
social media. I mean, I hope in saying that it has been scaling back a little bit, but that idea that everybody makes mistakes and, within reason of what it is. But once it's out there, it's out there. And I think just to be mindful of that. And if in fact, I always say this, and this is the truth. If we ever, like Brian and I go out to a restaurant and it's not a great experience, maybe we've been there before, we've seen like the excellence, if you will, but maybe that time it wasn't so great. I was always raised go to the source, go to the manager
Right.
and just speak to them, not horrifically, give terrible reviews over one time. And not to mention, everybody's human. Somebody may have
Right.
had, an incident at home or, whatever it is, and they brought it to work and maybe they, they're not their full selves that day. And so
Right.
I try to reflect even on myself. And so when you said that, I don't know, I just kept going in that direction. And I love that phrase for that.
Well, I think it's just common decency. I mean, we shouldn't really be looking, I don't wake up and say it's 9 o'clock, it's time to screw up. I don't do that. I don't think anybody does that. Maybe there's a small percentage, okay, Courtney, who do that. But the reality is, cut some slack. Don't be so. I mean, I was too driven at times. That's one of the things that I've learned from is, yeah, it's great to want to be a CEO, but have some fun, live the life, smell the roses, enjoy the moment, enjoy the journey. You can't always be a destination based person. Oh, I'll be happy when I get to be a CEO. Oh, I'll be happy when I'm VP. Oh, I'll be happy when I, can afford a new car or I've been on vacation. If you're always waiting for happiness is never going to arrive. So my view is if I'm in a restaurant and I've had some, I mean, I've been in the restaurant business most of my life. So I love the restaurant hospitality business all over the world, great people in Europe, John Benson and others, Adam Elliott, who've done great things in Europe and Asia. But the reality is I've also had some really terrible meals. And if it's service and you're there and it's unfriendly service or your food's taking too long, don't go off on the server. They're part of a bigger machine, and then think about it. Will it even be important in a not even a year? Will it be even important in an hour? So, and then reflect accordingly. If everything is a code red, you know, five, ring alarm, DEFCON 1. Who wants to live with that tension? You're wrapped up like a coiled copper. It's ridiculous. Chill. You gotta think about, is it important? Will it be important next week or next year? Or I usually think 3 or 5 years because then that helps you strategically. If I don't make this decision today, what impact will it have in 5 years? But if the impact is, what impact is having a meal that came 15 or 20 minutes later than you would have liked?
That's so true. And I self-reflect in those moments instead of writing a bad review out there that's permanent, as we know,
Yep.
it's thinking about, hey, one day I may be in a certain position. So
Right.
think about it in that moment. And you're right. I think if we all think about collectively coming together, understanding there's going to be bad days and stuff, but not to actually crucify that person simply because they made an honest mistake. And
Right.
like you said, learn from the mistake and move forward. And I think that's all you could do as a human being. But I'm so happy that you brought that up because I'm very, very passionate about putting good out there. And you're right. We all have to learn from mistakes, but do it in private, being
Right.
able to have private conversations. And that's where I think strong interpersonal communication comes into play, is how we communicate.
Right. No, Connie. And it's also, do you want to live your life hating?
100%.
Who wants to live the life with that kind of anger management that's not really controlled? It's doing you no good. You're in a doomsday, like doomsday scrolling, 8 hours a day now, 10 hours a day on social media. Most people are taking, and they tell me I've got no time. Well, maybe put your social media down and you got 8 hours. That's an unbelievable amount of time. But again, we can either approach it as being critical or maybe kind of phrase that being helpful. I wouldn't say why you doom scrolling for 8 hours. I'd say, what's your social media habits? Do you think you can cut back an hour on your social media habits? So that would give you, when people say, Des, how do you write books? How do I'm working on a screenplay with an awesome friend of mine, also a Fort Sherpa, John Rodder. We're working on Takedown, which is inspired by my true story of 15 Minutes of Shame. And people say, God, you're writing a book, you're doing a film, you're a screenplay, you've got books, you're working on a third book, you're on boards, you're all over the world. How do you have time? Because I don't spend 8 hours a day on social media, Courtney. I use that time to be productive you've got to be in control of your agenda, your life, and make your life the priority, not listening and learning what's happening on in Hollywood today, or what screen, who's been cancelled today, is not on my bingo card. And unfortunately, while you said things are getting better, people are still getting cancelled. People are trying to help hurt, doesn't matter what political affiliation, but don't cancel. Let them have their message. You have your message. Live your life. Why do I want anybody to live in my head rent free? If they're going to live in my head, they better be paying me a retainer. I better be on their board. I better be getting some cash. He's like Jerry Maguire. Show me the money. You want to live in my head and you want my focus? Show me the money.
Yes, that was epic. To get off that. So let me think here. Okay, so you let me get back to
It's not funny. It's a serious message.
so a couple things. I had 2 points there. So when you talk about, and I think it's so critical, and actually just to compare it, when you talk about like the doom scrolling, the 8 hours on social media,
Right.
I even like one factor actually like secretly behind the book club was legitimately to focus on things that are going to help you 10, 15 years. There's nothing wrong with being on social media, but do it sparingly and have
Absolutely.
time, cut out of your life, literally like, okay, I'm going to do this for 15 minutes, an hour, so forth. And then you start seeing productivity. And a lot of the success, as we know, that's long term,
Right.
really provides the high level of satisfaction in the end. And so the book club, and obviously you were featured on that. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thank
I
you.
wanted to throw that in there. But no, in all seriousness, but reading and understanding, gaining more knowledge from others through experience and just general education could
Right.
help you so much more than worrying about if somebody's on vacation or not, or what they're doing. When you
Right.
do too much, and actually, Des, that brings us to our thought number 2, focus.
Yep.
Why
Massive.
exactly? Why is focus essentially so important today?
There's a litany of reasons, Courtney. And to me, these are some of the most important questions you can ask yourself. So we've had some fun today talking about Code Red. Awful situation with Gene Hackman passing away last week, and the situation with his wife, and tragic situation. He was in Crimson Tide, one of my favorite films with Denzel Washington, and they had a code red, and there was going to be a nuclear annihilation. They were going to launch a nuclear bomb against the Russians at the time. What I think about focus is the code red with no fun on your career. It's got to be as serious as serious. So focus is about your life. What do you want? Most people spend more time thinking about where they're going to go on vacation or what party they're going to go to this weekend than my career. There's nothing more important than your career. It's going to fuel the rest of your life with your loved ones, your wife, your spouse, your boyfriend, whatever. That's going to drive your quality of life. So to me, when I say focus, the number one focus is on you. Courtney Inc., Des Inc. What is that person's incorporated mission statement? And you got to be hands-on. Could you imagine, would you leave your breathing, inhale, exhale to a temp, you've hired down the road? Oh, I think they're going to breathe every 5 seconds. But if they don't and they get busy, I had to go to the restroom. I was hungry. I'm on a life ventilated system that's now expired. That's the seriousness of focusing on your career. You got to want it. You got to work for it. You got to have a game plan. So I always say, Courtney, think about it. And not only that, it would be so beautiful if that's all we had to focus on. But we live in a John Wick world where bad guys are coming at us. That's crises, issues, problems, stupidness happening out there in the world at times. And you've got to deal all that swirling around. And if you've not got a plan, What chance do you think is everything's swirling around that you can keep centered? Why do you have a compass? So you can navigate. Oh, I see the North Star. You have to have your North Star on your career. And I got to tell you, in theory of thinking,
Mhm.
breaks or melts at first contact with reality. So if you've got a semi-cooked up plan of how you're going to be great in life, and then all these things come at you, you're going to be unanchored, underwater, drowned in a heartbeat. And so focus is, what's my plan? Where do I want to be in 3 years? Where do I want to be in 5 years? What's my vision? Now, what are the 5 things that are going to help me get to my North Star? Write them down. And then, oh, that's not enough. Then what are the imperatives that are going to help me deliver those 5 deliverables to reach my North Star, my vision for me? And and I know we can say when it's me, myself, and I, they're foolish games. And when you play foolish games, you win foolish prizes. But the reality is, this is not that case. Get in, get your 5 things, deliver it, and then measure it, Courtney. How did I do? It can't be something, I've worked and I learned. And by the way, I'm so appreciative of companies like Pepsi who gave me in my youth opportunities. Paul Clark, my first mentor in the UK, phenomenal guy, running a great company, by the way. I'll plug him. Fat pastry pasty in the UK, Cornish pasties, sausage rolls, all the good stuff that you should be eating daily. He's doing phenomenal stuff now. Him and his wife, I should say. But the reality all comes back to, they believed in you. They had a plan. You measure it. What gets measured gets done. If you assume you make, out of you and me, again, so important, Courtney. I cannot underscore the importance to you having your own plan and then measuring yourself against that. And being, and you can't look at it with, rose petal glasses. What are you doing? And are you hitting the goals? And be truthful. Oh yeah. It's like I used to, true story. I'm in South Dakota. I'm running Hot Stuff Foods. It was my first time as a CEO. I've just turned 30. And I forgot one thing, that what you put in your mouth if you don't exercise, and you know this because you're a professional former athlete, or gymnast, I should say. I don't know if it was professional. I know you were at collegiate level, okay? But we'll not go any further than that. You fill me in. But I remember being in South Dakota, and again, what I was putting in my mouth, what I was believing I looked like, and I walked through the house one day, and I said to my wife, hey, when did you take this picture of my dad? Now, my dad, pretty big guy, never saw, a slab of cheese he wouldn't munch on, or white bread, or all the unhealthy things that, we were consuming. And I said, when did you take this picture of my dad? He was like 240 odd pounds. I thought in my mind I was still 180 in stealth. And she said, that's him. And I said, no, it can't be. That's my dad. And she said, Des, no, it's you. And I went straight to the gym that day. I enrolled the whole family. And it's about how we can distort reality. So I know I went off on a tangent there, Connie. I apologize, but your future code red, you cannot distort reality. You got to be real. You got to be honest with yourself, because who else is going to be? Except for your wife and spouse who'll always put you in your place, and your kids. Oh my God. And your grandkids when you have them, if you have them.
That is so true. But when you speak about the realness, being honest with yourself, but then also you're right, like remaining focused of the big
Right.
picture. And I've heard you speak about it before, the like plan on a page. And
Right.
that idea of, you're right, like that even goes back to the honesty of looking at it where you start from. And even if you pivot, like how did you adjust? What have you accomplished from that move? So could you maybe just elaborate a little bit more, particularly on that concept?
Well, I think that the most important thing we should, have in the forefront and the foreground of our mind is adaptability.
Yeah.
So, again, I thought I was 180 looking like Hercules. I was 240 looking like Barney on, Barney and Fred. A combination of maybe what Mike Myers played, the fat, whatever professor, nutty. So if you're not adaptable, bad things are going to happen. You're going to get crushed. So to me, it's like you can have a vision, but you got to be able to pivot and you got to be flexible. Couple of thoughts here for us all to think about. YouTube, pretty popular, correct? Started as a dating app. A dating app. Look where it is. Instagram was a whiskey app. Spotify, single site store. Amazon, sold books. You can buy the world on Amazon today. If they only said, hey, I do books, I do dating apps, I do, some of these apps, though, you wish they did keep to the purpose and just be very singular. You know, but it started with, I've got an idea, I've got a vision, and then it's be adaptable to get to the final, promise, taking in out all the different vector points that you can go through. So I hope that helps. And then also, in the book that I know you've so beautifully plugged. Oh, by the way, do you see that thinky way to the top right behind me? No subliminal plugs, but onwards is a word I've used all my life. As like if you're moving onwards, things are going to go well for you. You're not stuck. You're not in a ditch. You are moving onwards. You are going to keep pushing through no matter what to success. And so in the book, Think Your Way to the Top, the second exercise, thought exercise of 52, which are really force amplifiers and multipliers as you go through the program. It's about having your own plan on a page, and it takes you through the steps, Courtney. So I would recommend, please go out and buy the book and 15 Minutes of Shame and get on my Thinking Academy. What else can I plug? Courtney's Corner and the Power of Positivity. But the reality is the more that we can focus on what we think is important, the better. Be adaptable, be coachable. I'm coachable. Talk to my wife, but I think I'm coachable-ish. That's the important things, Courtney.
No, thank you so much for that, Des. And this podcast has been inspiring. It has been fun.
Thank you.
Always like to end on a positive note. And this has certainly been positive, no doubt.
Well, thank you.
Do you have a positive quote or a positive phrase to leave the community with today?
Well, I've already plugged it once. The best phrase for me to live my life is onwards. I'm moving forward. I'm still standing. I'll have successes. I'll have, crushing defeats. You got to smooth out your highs and smooth out the lows to move forward. But if you can move forward with a mindset of onwards, that you're not going to be defeated, that you'll do whatever it takes, that you'll get your focus on, that you'll dream big. They are classic things that are going to end up with you in a good place. And dreaming big, I suppose, I know we're running out of time when we're in the penalty box here, Courtney, but dreaming big to me, if I could spend a minute, if you don't mind, there was some research done for NASA by Dr. Land and Beth Jarman, and they looked at 1,600 kids, and at 2 years old, these 1,600 kids, 98% were judged at the genius level. When you got to be a teenager, 30%. When you got to adult, of those 1,600, 2% were at the genius level. We started at 98. We had all these ideas as a kid. We were always inspired and just thought that everything was possible. And maybe through society, education, conformity, we lost that ability to be creative. We got to find that. I'd ask you to rediscover that. So my last phrase from Zig Ziglar is, if you are not prepared to learn, no one can help you. But if you're prepared to learn, no one can stop you. Be the force you want to be. Thank you, Zig, Mr. Ziegler. And I hope everybody on your podcast take that to heart. That's the way to live.
Des, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on this
Thank you.
podcast, Plenty of Positivity podcast. And from the beginning, like I said, one thing we all have in common when I bring guests onto this podcast is no matter where you are on the hierarchical, chart, so to speak, but we all have that relatability through those struggles, through those challenges, but then ultimately coming on this podcast and highlighting all the positive nature, all the success, all of the accomplishments. But I think it's so important to capture that journey
Yep.
in between. And what you have done today has truly inspired, I know myself, I am sure for the
Thank
listeners
you.
too as well. So Des, once again, a big thank you for coming on the podcast
It's
today.
my pleasure, Connie. Continue doing the great things you do. Everybody get onto Courtney Beck on LinkedIn. Follow her. Positivity, power of positivity in Courtney's Corner. This lady is a rock star. Thank you. And good luck with everything that you're doing with you and your husband.
Thank you so much, Des.